Hey, good morning, Daily Bible Time. Dominic Steele, Mark 13 this morning, and we come to by far and away the most controversial chapter in the Gospel of Mark, and it is pretty difficult to cover the issues in the 5-minute bite-sized chunks that we get on Daily Bible Time, and so I'm very much looking forward to being able to give it the full 30-minute treatment in a sermon on a Sunday in a couple of weeks' time at Village Church, but you get to think through some of the issues with me over the next few days as I do my preparation with you. Let me encourage you to go and read the chapter as a whole unit. Today I'm going to draw from a short online article by Lindsay Kennedy at mydigitalseminary.com, and really his brief summary of the position taken on Mark 13 by my friend Peter Bolt. In Peter Bolt's view, and I remember hearing Philip Jensen argue something very similar before I read Peter Bolt's thesis, Mark 13 refers not to AD 70 nor the second coming, but to the death and resurrection of Jesus and the commissioning of the disciples to go out and preach the gospel. And Bolt points out that the common view, the AD 70 view or the return of Jesus view, both assume extra textual information for their interpretation, particularly of Mark 13, 24 through 27. What's that passage? Mark 13, 24 through 27. Well, it's where Jesus says, let me read it to you, "In those days, after that tribulation, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not shed its light, the stars will be falling from the sky, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. Then they'll see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. He'll send out the angels, gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven." And the traditional views is, well, on the one hand, that's either AD 70, the destruction of the Jerusalem temple, or the return of Christ. And Peter Bolt says is that in those common interpretations, where that incident is referring to the temple destruction or the return of Christ, in order to come to those conclusions, you're required to look outside of Mark in order to understand the passage. And he points out that neither AD 70 nor the second coming are actually found within Mark's gospel. And Peter Bolt asks, what if Mark himself were to record the fulfillment of the passage? And Bolt believes we need to reread Mark 13 in its own literary context, in the context of the book of Mark, and see that Mark 13 is set in the middle of conflict between Jesus and the Jewish leaders, Mark 11 and 12, and 14 to 15. And when you cite Mark 13 between 11 and 12 and 14 and 15, the chapter, he says, becomes an apocalyptic precursor to Christ's coming passion and resurrection, and we find fulfillment in the remaining chapters of Mark. Now, that is a very attractive and intriguing thesis. He says to really understand Bolt's view, this is Lindsay Wilson, it's best to read Bolt's article, and I'm going to link to that article below in the notes. But Peter asks, what's the significance in his beginning of trying to wrestle with it, of Mark 13, 32 to 37. He says the most overlooked section of Mark 13 is actually the most important section, and so he says begin there. Mark 13:35 refers to the 4 watches of the Roman night and asks, when will the hour come? Evening, midnight, the cockcrow, or dawn? And interestingly, these same references are found in Mark's Passion narrative in chapters 14 and 15. The Last Supper was held in the evening, Gethsemane takes place at midnight, and shares numerous connections with Mark 13. Jesus prays about the hour in Mark 14:35 and Mark 14:31, and the suggestion is that's a parallel to Mark 13:32. The disciples are urged to watch and pray in Mark 14:34 and 38. Upon Jesus' arrest, the disciples flee in Mark 14:50. Peter fails at the cockcrow in Mark 14:66 through 72, and the crucifixion takes place in the morning in Mark 15:1, and time is slowed down to record the 3rd, 6th and 9th hours in chapter 15. And so Bolt argues that Mark pays special attention to the Roman watches because it's fulfilling Jesus' prediction in Mark 13:32 to 37. So he says Jesus is not referring to the hour of his return, but the hour of his death. Again, I'm going to link to you Peter Bolt's article so that you can read that. And also I'll link to Lindsay Wilson's simpler summary. But most of all, let me encourage you to read Mark chapter 13. Thanks for being with us today on Daily Bible Time. We'll explore a little more on this tomorrow morning. Cheers. God bless.